Welcome to Surthrival, the podcast about befriending grief. I'm your host, Stacia Gaines. A warning, this episode is about suicide. So if you're listening with younger folks or you might find this a trigger, just wanted to let you know that that is the subject matter of this episode. I'm really grateful today to have Natalie King as my guest. Natalie plays a special role in my grief story. I've told listeners in the past that I had the opportunity to go to the beach for 2 weeks of healing, solitude, and rest after Matt's death. And while I was gone, Natalie and our mutual friend Jenny got my brother to come let them in my house. And when I returned from the beach, there were scripture cards all throughout my house. And I kid you not, to this day, I will still find one that is in some random drawer that I have not opened. And so I will be forever grateful, Natalie, for you and Jenny doing that. There was nothing like coming back to my house and just knowing that my whole house had been prayed over and that there were scripture cards everywhere for me to find. And so I will let you tell a little bit of your origin story, who you are, who you were, where you came from, all those things, Natalie.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm originally from Cape Town, South Africa. I grew up in Port Elizabeth majority of my life. And when I turned 25, a dear friend asked me if I wanted to go on a mission trip. At that point in my life, I was ready to not be where I was. And I'm sure we'll share a little bit more about that later, but I was ready to go, and so I said yes. The mission trip was only accepting 13 people, and I was number 13, and my friend was number 14. And so I ended up going to 3 foreign countries with 12 complete strangers, which ultimately led me to where I am right now. I fell in love with a children's home in Zambia. Grace Klein community, who I work for right now, ended up coming and visiting that children's home, and they sent me an invitation to come to the United States. And I was originally supposed to be here for 2 months back in 2014, and I am still here. I met my husband here in Birmingham, Alabama, and our 3rd anniversary is coming up
Oh, happy
next
anniversary.
month. Thank you. And we've got 2 beautiful little boys. They're about to be 2 years old. Yeah, and we're just both, Jackson and I both work for Grace Klein Community, just going after it, asking the Lord, where would you have us today that we could bless our community? How can we find more food support, other resources just to bless food insecure people in our area?
Yes, say a little bit more about Grace Klein community, Natalie. There are
Yeah.
people that listen who are not from the Birmingham area, and talk about what you do here in Birmingham in the state of Alabama, but also internationally.
Yeah. So Grace Klein means little gift from God. So we have all these little gifts, which is the food support, clothing, diapers and wipes, school supplies, any basic necessity that you can think of, Grace Klein can provide it, but ultimately is to share about the greatest gift, which is Jesus. So we get to meet a lot of incredible people every single day. Locally, we've been able to reach up to 47 counties in Alabama. Our heart is to reach all 67. But then also, Grace Klein partners with 6 global partners. We try to send a mission team over every year to go and bless one of our partners. And yes, I got the gift of being able to hang out with you last year at Beats and Books in South Africa.
Yeah, let's talk about that experience a little bit. So 9 women from the Birmingham area, including Natalie and Jenny Waltman, the founder, and 7 more of us, plus Natalie's husband, Jackson, and the twins who were, I think, turned 4
3
months old.
months? Yeah, they were
Yeah,
3 months
turned
old.
4 months old while we were there, if I
Yeah,
recall.
yeah, yeah.
20 of us lived in a house together in near Jeffreys Bay, South Africa. 20 people. Most of us shared one bathroom, one shower. It was winter time there, even though we went in the summertime. And there's no heat in the homes there. And 2.5 of the most meaningful, special, best weeks of my entire life. We went as a group of white women and black women, and we all bunked together in a dorm room like we were at summer camp. We cooked meals for 20 people in a kitchen. We used to say it's like camping indoors. But just a wonderful partner with beats and books and the people of Jeffreys Bay, South Africa. And it was just a very, very meaningful time for all of us. So
Mhm.
that's one of the things that Grace Klein Community does. And so I'm really grateful for that experience in my own life. So after my husband died by suicide, Natalie shared with me that she was also a suicide survivor, and she told me the story. So when she complimented me on the last two episodes that we have had, one being really more about suicide prevention and just facts, the second one being more about helping suicide survivors, I asked if she would come on the podcast and share her story that she shared with me. So, Natalie, I'll let you share whatever you feel like you'd like to share about
Yeah.
your suicide surthrival story.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember the day like it was yesterday, even though it was 25 years ago. It was a Thursday, and my brother and I just went about our normal school day. My dad took us to school. He actually, we call it a bucky. Here you would say a truck, but it had a canopy over, and so we would pick up the neighborhood kids. My dad would all drive us to school. And I specifically that morning sat in the front of the truck with my dad while the other students were in the back. And things were just quiet on the drive, nothing unusual. And once we got to school, my dad handed me an envelope and he said, "Give this to your mom when you get home." I did have the thought in my mind, why can you not give this to mom when you get home? But honestly, as a 13-year-old girl at the time, I wouldn't say I had a terrible relationship with my dad. I think I always felt fear to some extent, but not because he did anything wrong. It was just that I think I noticed something wasn't okay. And so I kind of distanced myself from it. He was always quiet, didn't smile a lot, didn't try to engage me necessarily, as a daughter of, hey, let's play this or let's do that. It was just kind of like, a dad's home, let's not be in
And
that
that
space
and
where
that was
he's at.
always the case, Natalie? There wasn't a
That's the
change?
Yeah, no, that's just what I remember.
Okay.
I don't necessarily have memories, and it may have been from the trauma, but I don't remember a lot from 13 and lower.
Mhm.
Um, so my memory of my dad was more fear-based, let's distance ourselves. Um, I personally, as a young girl, thought that I may have been a bit of the issue, wondering why does he not want to communicate with me? So it just made more sense just to kind of stay away. So my relationship wasn't that great with my dad, but there were no issues. My dad was not a bad person at all.
Yeah.
Um, Anyway, and so I remember still having drama class after school. I had such a great day. Everything was amazing. I remember the day so clearly. And a neighbor ended up coming and picking me up from school. And I remember him just saying, "Hey, your mom got caught up with somebody. She just asked me to come and pick you up from school." We dropped my friend off at her home. And when I got home, I just saw a bunch of cars, no clue what was going on. And as soon as I walked in the front door, my mom was just crying and just telling me that my dad had passed away. I don't remember in the moment or when she told me that he had committed suicide. It's not a memory I have other than I remember her saying that he died. My sweet brother had he had gotten home before me, so he found out before I did. And in boys, in any way that they respond, his sweet knuckles were blood from just how he beat things. He had a punching bag, and that was how he quickly responded. And my response was I vomited as a young girl. I don't know. That's
Mm,
just how my body responded.
mhm,
Um, and I just remember sitting on the bed with my mom, and just trying to process what just happened. And then, of course, there's the series of events where things then need to start changing. We were in the position where we were going to lose our family home,
mm,
and you know, God made sure we were not homeless. At age 13 and 14, our school ended up, education isn't free in South Africa. The school ended up covering our school fees so that we could remain in school. I remember my teachers paying for my matric farewell dress. I think that might be called homecoming here or something. It's my end of the 12th grade, um, like formal dance. The school covered that. We had people give toward our family home so that we wouldn't be homeless. Just the series of events that come with such a loss when the dad of the home is, you know, primarily bringing in the finances. My dad owned his own business as well. My mom had not worked since we were born. So there was no form of income coming into the home. My mom was always home when I got home from school. She was always readily available for whenever we needed her. But then things had to shift because my mom had to find employment as well. Part of our home had to be transferred into a rental home so that we could generate income as well. I remember some of the crazy things that that you deal with in South Africa is we ended up selling chickens from our backyard just to bring in finances. My brother
wow.
and I loved the process of being able to do everything from the live chicken to the sold chicken. So there were things that I remembered that were drastic shifts in my life of how our family had to bring in income, but they were also memorable moments. Um, More on the heart level side, I definitely struggled with the fact that I knew he had planned what he was going to do, knowing that he gave me that envelope. The envelope wasn't a note or anything. The girls that we were transporting to school, they would give us money for gas. And so one of the students had just given that to my dad that morning, and so he wanted to make sure that my mom had
Mhm,
that money. Um, so that's how I know that he planned it. I think it really broke my heart knowing that I was the last person to see my dad and that he didn't say anything, that I didn't say anything. I really could have questioned that, well, why can't you give it to her when you get home? But that thought certainly crossed my mind for a long time of I was not worth it enough for him to want to live through what
mm,
he was going through. As a
right.
13-year-old girl, I don't know what help he was getting. I don't understand the struggles. I do know it was finance based to an extent. My dad was such a generous giver, and I don't blame him for that at all. But finances, it's crazy how something like that could potentially drive someone to want to end their life. Um, but yeah, then growing up, getting older, by the time a friend of mine asked me to go on that mission trip, this was 2012, and my dad passed in 2001, so it had been
Mm,
years. And I was depressed. I had gotten onto antidepressants. Um, as a young woman, I wanted out. I didn't know how to get out. I just couldn't, I had a job. I was stable in terms of being able to go to work and all, but internally I was dying inside. I didn't know my value. I didn't understand why I was still here. Why would our family, I explain this to some people that I think it would be easier to have experienced a divorce in the family because, or no, sorry, the other way around. I think it would be easier to have lost a parent versus having to go through a divorce. This is just my personal
mm,
experience. Divorce, you still have both your parents. but you're so divided. You don't know where you should be or shouldn't be. I didn't have the choice. I got to choose my one parent. Well, it was decided for me. And it even though I lost a parent and I still had a parent, I felt like our family was completely done. So as
Hmm.
a young girl, I had the feelings of an orphan. Even though I had a mom, even though I had a brother, that orphan mentality was something that definitely um, stayed with me. And I
Hmm.
think that's what I was searching for many, many years is somebody take care of me. Someone see the deep need I have on the inside of me and help me. And I think a lot of my shift actually took place when I moved away from South Africa. So I thank the Lord that I went on that mission trip that brought me to America because once I got here and I started serving with Grace Klein, it was a unique environment. But people here began to see the value on the inside of me. They
Mhm.
didn't see Natalie as the poor girl who lost her dad, who was struggling with depression. It was, man, do you realize you have that gift? Like, could you help me with this? And it brought value. And I slowly began to realize what I had to contribute to the world. And it was like my eyes were shifted from this horrible trauma that we had to experience to wait, there's so much more to life, and you potentially have the opportunity to invest in people so they don't have to go through this. Because what we do at Grace Klein too is people are in financial struggles. People are depressed. People are lonely because of situational things that are taking place that maybe they have no control over. But now I have an opportunity to help meet the needs of those people so that finances don't have to be an issue, so that hunger doesn't have to be an issue. They're not fighting between, am I going to feed my family today or keep my power bill on? Um, I think the Lord brought my story full circle.
Mhm.
And of course, I would give anything to have my dad back and have a true relationship with him. But I also don't think that it wasn't in vain. Like his story and the person that he was, like his legacy remains because he was
Mhm.
generous, and I choose to be generous every single day.
Mhm.
I will give until it's I have nothing left. Um, so yeah, that's just a bit of my story, and maybe there's something that popped up in there that rings true to you, or if you want to
Mhm.
ask me more on that, I'm so open to any questions.
One of the things that you said was that there were financial issues, and that was a factor in your dad's death. But Misha Emmett in the last episode explained to us that suicide is never just one thing.
Mm,
Um, and as a 13-year-old, or even, as a 50-something-year-old, it's just beyond those of us who have survived it to understand something
understanding.
that is just unfathomable. It
Mm,
suicide never makes sense. There's no story where you're like, "Oh, I
this is
get
it.
I get that. That's
Mm,
that's that's the reason, and I totally get it."
I believe that.
Um,
Yeah.
but people who get to the point of deciding that their life is not worth living, they are suffering so much pain, and they for a myriad of reasons cannot figure out any other way out. And maybe the financial problems were part of it. Maybe something had happened that you or your mom didn't even know about that was
Right.
like the quote last straw. But we also talked about, the you said something about feeling like was I not enough? And I think my children felt the same way,
Mm,
is like, how could you leave us? How could you leave your grandchildren? How and I the times that I got the most angry, and occasionally do now,
mm,
is I will just yell, "How could you leave me?" And that feeling of, was I not enough?
mm.
And I think that's just real normal in
Yeah.
any suicide bereaved person's story, is this feeling that we were not enough.
Mhm. Mhm. And definitely, and I mean, only as an adult did I come to realize, when I was fighting that, "Oh, I'm not good enough for my earthly father to have lived," and God just reminded me, "Hang on a minute, you are worth dying for. Like, come on,
Mhm,
girl, let's get you out of that." And sometimes I do have to remind myself that, no matter
mhm.
the circumstance. I think it applies to so many things in life, for sure.
Yeah, and you also brought up the trauma. I think with suicide, there is always trauma. There's always trauma because of the things that we just talked about. There's always trauma because it's a violent act that a person does to themselves, and there you can't help but be affected by that trauma.
Right.
And I was wondering, did you have any professional help to work through some of that trauma and grief?
Yeah, so they don't know if it was a requirement, but I remember being asked to go and see our school counselor for some time. And as an adult, I went and saw a professional counselor as well. And I don't know if it's like this everywhere, but it was actually so interesting because sometimes I would just sit in her office and she would make me beat a drum. And
Oh.
I would just beat that drum as hard as I could. And I think some of it was to allow me to express emotions that I didn't know how to express.
Mhm.
So it was good for me. It taught me a lot. She tried to help me understand concepts to why people think the way they think. But yeah, I did that in adulthood.
Um, we talk about expressing the feels and that feelings are neutral. And I think it's very, very normal in the case of a suicide to
Mhm.
be angry at the person, just to be angry about the circumstances. And one of the things that I have found interesting is really the only appropriate way to express anger in a way that helps is some kind of physical act.
Mhm.
So beating a
I love
drum
that.
and like
Mhm.
punching a punching bag, like you talked about your brother
Yeah, yeah.
using the punching bag.
Mhm.
One of the things that I clearly remember doing is screaming at the top of my lungs in my car one day.
Interesting.
I was
Mhm.
so angry, and I think that I screamed so loudly it actually hurt my ears, but I screamed, "Why did you leave me? How could you leave me?" And just crying and screaming and beating the steering wheel. But with anger, that's an appropriate response. The
Mhm.
Bible says it doesn't say don't be angry. It says be angry and do not sin.
Right.
And
Mhm.
there are ways to express anger in a physical, violent way that doesn't hurt anybody else.
Anybody?
Whether
Mhm.
it's throwing an egg at a tree or throwing something, punching something, screaming, not at
Mhm.
someone, but just releasing that pent up anger. So
Yeah,
I love that
that's
you beat a
good.
drum.
Yeah. I actually thought of another thing that was really unique. So in South Africa, we learn two languages, being English and Afrikaans. And in my Afrikaans class, directly translated, the topic for one of our orals that we had to talk about was your deepest sore, like your deepest heart
Mm,
sore. And this topic came up shortly after my dad had passed away. And
mm,
so it forced me to have to sit with my mom and be able to write out my experience of losing my dad in another language, but it still helped me process it and write it out. And then I spoke it to all of my classmates,
mm,
which helped them understand what I had just experienced and where I was at at age 13. And I thought that was so beneficial for even my peers to know and understand so that if I was upset, in class, or maybe I didn't make it to the next period because I needed to go see the school counselor. It wasn't something that was being questioned or, something crazy is going on with Natalie. It was, she needs some space. And I thought that was really sweet. I don't know if the school did that intentionally, but it was good for where we were at.
That's what this podcast does for me.
Mm,
Every time I get in front of this mic and talk to a guest and share stories and feelings, it really helps to get it out. Matter of fact, Natalie, I was telling you right before we hit record that in the last 2 or 3 weeks, I have had the opportunity to share deeply my story with several people, which has really caused me to have some very vivid dreams.
mm,
Um, and I don't know if you had dreams afterward, but like dreams are often our way that our subconscious is trying to make sense of stuff that we consciously can't figure out. And so I've been in a habit of writing down my dreams when I first wake up. If it's like, oh, what was that? I
mm,
write it down and then I sit with my feelings, how I felt in that dream for a little bit and think, what is happening in my subconscious that I'm maybe dealing with and I'm not aware of on the surface?
mm,
Some common themes that I've had recently are themes of not fitting in. Like I'm in a group of people, but I'm really different from everybody else, and I
mm,
feel kind of on the fringe. I've had some feelings of abandonment sometimes, or just not being loved in the way that I long to be loved. And so that's another thing that for me has been really helpful. If you do have dreams, to write down and just sit with those feelings that you
mm,
had in the dreams to do, a little bit of processing that you maybe are not doing consciously, but you're doing unconsciously or subconsciously in your dreams.
like a heart check. How did that
Yeah.
make me feel? Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. So you express the feeling, but you also, I think it's okay to ask, and it sounds kind of weird, but how do I feel about that feeling?
Mhm. Right.
Not just, okay, I feel angry, but how do I feel
Yes.
about feeling
Feeling
angry?
angry.
Do I
Mhm.
feel guilty? Do I feel like I should be over it? Do I feel like it's wrong to be angry? So I think expressing those feelings, whether it's to a counselor or through a journal or through drawing, singing, just yelling, whatever it is just one way to kind of move forward in your surthrival, in getting through the pain.
Mhm.
Have to go into the darkness to get to the other side.
Right. Yeah, it's good.
Um, how often do you think about your dad and about what happened 25 years ago now?
Yeah. I tend to think about him when it's special occasions. So when I got married, my brother ended up walking me down the aisle. We just honored him during our wedding. Uh, he got mentioned a lot, and so it was really sweet. But special occasions like that, and then the birth of our boys, I would have loved to see his response to me being married and having kids. And my brother is married and has 3 kids as well. So I think there's those moments where I wish he was around and would love to know how proud he, is and of us. But my mom definitely uh, does that for mom and dad's side of
Yeah.
things to make sure that we know
That
we.
must have been hard for her. She had to fill the role of both parents because you guys were young.
Yeah.
By the time my kids had lost their dad to suicide, they were grown and either married or about to be married the next week.
Mm,
Um,
mm,
and that's one of the things that they still grieve. Like my son had a son about 6 or 8 months after Matt died, and he
mm,
said, "Mom, I just wish that I could ask for his advice as
Mhm.
a father. I just wish I
Yeah.
could ask him questions.
Mhm.
And so that's kind of been part of his grief is not having his dad to ask questions about how to be a dad.
Yeah, yeah. And my dad used to love music. He actually had a side gig of being a DJ. So he would DJ all of our school dances and things, and our boys love music. My brother's boys love music, and so I think his legacy of music is definitely going to come down the generations. But what I think is so sweet is all the boys, whether it's my brother's side or our side, they have the sprunk genes, so they look like my dad's side of the family.
Oh,
So it's really sweet. I'm often saying to the boys, "I wish you could have seen your granddaddy. You look just like him."
oh, that's sweet. So there is that legacy. They do live on through our genes and through our memories and through just all the ways that we loved them and miss them.
Right. Yeah. And I think what's so important too is it doesn't have to be our story. You know, just because it happened to someone in our family, it doesn't mean it has to be
Mm,
our story too. And a lot of the time I never thought I was going to make it past 25.
mm,
And I'm 38 now. And just what a gift for new life in Jesus.
mm,
You know, that is not a thought that I have had in years.
mm,
You know, I had taken medication at one point. I do not have to do that anymore. Like, it is just so beautiful to see how the Lord can just restore your heart 100%,
mm,
to not be in that place. So, even just for anyone who's listening, like, there is hope. There is definitely hope. If anyone is struggling currently with suicidal thoughts or depression,
mhm.
it does not have to be your story.
Yes. And let me remind you, listeners, there are all kinds of resources on my website. You can always dial 988. There's someone 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year that can just talk to you. And they're trained to listen. So call. And if you're concerned about someone in your family, you can also call that number and just talk to someone, and you don't have to suffer alone. Natalie, thank you so much.
Thank you, Stacia.
Thank you for sharing your story, and again, I thank you again for how you blessed me with scripture throughout my house those almost 3 years ago. All right, well, listeners, thank you for joining us, and I hope that we will hear from more folks. And again, if you have any questions or you just want to talk to somebody, please feel free to send me something by my website or to my email. Thank you again, Natalie.